I think one of the most interesting conversations we have with people, outside of Google is just like, how does search work? And search, unlike AI, has like been a little bit of a hidden box type of like skill set. So trying to like just shed light on some of the complexities and some of the bigger problems and like how to think and the various mental models. At Google search, you just had like an insanely complex setup, right? Like we had like 70 plus different backends, knowledge engines, unstructured databases, structured databases, and any particular query you might call like 70 plus of those, and then you had to like merge back all the results. So it was pretty chaotic. And you go through this learning curve where, it looks a little bit like the IQ bell curve, where in some sense in the middle, you think you understand everything, and eventually the mental model simplifies quite a bit. And this is very reductive, but it's the only way to stay sane when you're actually trying to build a very, very complex search engine. It turns out to be pretty useful. I mean, it's not just reductive, it's actually reductive in a pretty useful way because it helps you understand where to focus on when you're trying to think about how to optimize, how to build basically state-of-the-art search. And when we talk about grabbing stuff and sorting stuff, it really goes back to retrieval and ranking. And when you think about it from a metrics perspective, retrieval is where you make your recall gains, where you try to grab as much stuff as you can. Many people make this mistake sometimes where they're very selective about what they retrieve. Like some of the first conversations I have with people is like, why don't you just grab everything? And then, it's pretty provocative. Many times you can grab everything. Sometimes you have a small data set, just grab it, put it in memory, you're done. Like that's your retrieval. Now you just have to sort stuff. Or sometimes the LLMs can just just shove it in the context window, and LLM tries to it does the precision part of the equation. Now, of course, many cases this doesn't work. So now you'd have to develop a little bit of a mental model. And that's why I say search is just ranking, because when you really look at retriever, this whole grabbing stuff, it's kind of a spectrum. And the spectrum starts with this idea of just grab everything. And in the LLM world, it's shove everything in the context window. Previously in the search world, we had some systems that actually took an entire data set. So we had the music recommendations, movie recommendations in search. That was around 5,000 movies. We just shove them all in memory and then do a lot of the recommendation processing online. Now, this gives you 100% recall because you never miss candidates. I think the talk previously was talking about how these type 2 errors manifest and oh shit, I'm missing stuff. If you're missing stuff, it's very hard. Ranking can never compensate for that. So recall is important, retrieval is important. Now, when things get a little bit larger, then you can shove them in memory. You have to start to get a little bit more creative. Now, this is, I feel, where everybody in the industry is at, which is you do relevance ranking. Now, relevance ranking is very interesting because if you have a decent sized thing that is not too big, not too complex, not too many attributes to it, relevance is a good proxy for just the important stuff to grab. So instead of saying I'm grabbing and scoring everything, I'll just say I'll grab and score almost everything. And relevance, BM25, vector-based indices based on language embeddings tend to work pretty well. Again, but you have to not forget, this is a proxy. This is a proxy for what's important to you. And most of the talk is going to be about what is important for you and how do you find that. Now, when you get to things like the web corpus at Google or the 70 plus corpora, or we're working with many clients now, and they have very large data sets. And neither the first nor the second works because the data set's pretty large. And then the complexity, or what I would call the topology, the information space. We're going to talk a little bit about information theory, but there's just too much information content for relevance to be enough, right? This is where you have to use complex retrieval strategies. Now, at the extreme, if you're working with 70 plus backends, your retrieval starts to look a little bit like a MapReduce with a lightweight version of ranking. And I only say that, this might or might not mean much to you, but you have to go grab a lot of things and then rank the things that you've grabbed in a very efficient way. Because again, if you look at Google search or any search that you end up wanting to do, it's on the query path. You can't spend too much time doing it. So 70 plus backends, very complex ranking, you have to be done in 200 milliseconds. That doesn't leave a lot of time. So then you can't do complex ranking on everything. You have to do lightweight ranking. So all this to say, even retrieval itself boils down to a ranking problem because lightweight ranking is a version of ranking. So now this is where comes well, search is just ranking. Because when it becomes really, really complex, the long pole is, do you understand what you're seeing and can you order it properly so that you can both grab it and that you can sort it? So retrieval approximation of ranking. So now the question is what makes for a good ranking function? And that's kind of the topic of the talk. Good ranking, the best way to think about it is good ranking sees the semantics of your corpus. And this is a very important thing because we're going to talk a lot about information content. Again, when you come from information retrieval background, you think a lot about how much am I seeing of what I need to see. And again, relevance ends up being a very small part of it. So let's talk a little bit about if you have a final score and that's the score you're ranking stuff, what goes into that score? And I'm giving a little bit of a web search type view here. but I want you to see like, yes, there's topicality, which is the closest thing to relevance, right? Is this query and the document, are they topical to each other? But then you get into things like entities, right? If you say like things like, oh, whether San Mateo, like, well, which San Mateo are you really talking about, right? Because you might very easily match to a one that is relevant, but that's actually the wrong one. And that ends up being really important, especially if you have like structured or semi-structured items in your corpus. Language embeddings are very interesting, but you'll see many examples where language embeddings don't actually work because there's a lot of conflation between the terms in your domain and general purpose terms. Like if you're talking about cars, Jaguar is a luxury car, but if you just hit a language embedding, the more popular version of Jaguar is actually an animal. It happens. So query is the same. Once you look at your queries, things like intent classification, sometimes like, what are you asking? One of the most complex things in search was short queries. Like if you say falafel, what do you mean? Do you want a restaurant? Do you want a recipe? Do you want just nutrition information? Do you want just the Wikipedia article? Like it's very, very hard. So now you have to like be sophisticated how you understand the query as well. So now this goes back to seeing, right? And intent classification has nothing to do with relevance because like all these things are relevant to the word falafel, but like which of them do you actually want? And now it turns out like, oh, I have to build like signals to understand what that means. Publisher level signals are very interesting. I'm seeing this a lot with like deep research type things. Every time I do like a deep research, I get like crap results. and part of it is they're not trusted sites. They're not sites I would go to. And this is a big problem. And like, this is why, for example, Google spends so much time, and Bing and others, right? Like what is a trusted site? Like if I'm actually want to buy something, what's a website that's not going to scam me is a very, very important question. And again, has nothing to do with relevance because you can say like credit cards, cheap credit cards, you definitely would not want the things that are most relevant because the things that are most relevant tend to also be spammy and scammy things. So now you need scam and spam signals. And that's again, going back to seeing. You need to see this idea of spam for you to be able to give non-spammy results. And then, there's aggregate level signals, like everybody understands popularity, click signals. One of the most bizarre things after leaving Google when we talk to people about AI and search is like, there's no feedback loops. Like if you take Google search or Bing or wherever, if you extract click signals from the ranking, the quality collapses. Absolutely. Like it's just not going to be anything interesting there. But then people have all this data, but they're not like funneling it back into the ranking or into the scoring or the AI. And I think that was kind of like interesting. And one last thing I'll say like also about the web, while it seems like a horizontal corpus and only relevance matters, if you think of like one of the earliest innovations there was PageRank, right? And what PageRank said is the prominence of a website is how many other websites have linked back into this website. So a version of social proof. Now, this has nothing to do with relevance. It's relevance and social proof, and that gives you better ranking. And PageRank was one of the main reasons initially in 1999 even, when Google was much better than Yahoo and others. And now when you go like, the rest of the industry is working what I call like more like vertical semantics. So things like maps. If you're in maps, like you care about user reviews, you care about location. If you're ranking podcasts, you care about listen counts. Shopping is a very interesting one where like embeddings for shopping, because products are very specific in their semantics, they end up like mattering much more than just language embeddings. Things like real estate, you have to have these semi-structured attributes to be able to understand like, hey, is there a pool, is there no pool, and what is the difference, and how do you rank them? So for example, one really interesting example from real estate ranking, if you're doing this like agent that like goes rooms, like if somebody says, I want a 3-bedroom apartment, do you only show them 3? Or do you show them 3 at the top and then 4 afterwards? Or do you show them 3 at the top and 2 afterwards? And this goes back to the like a real estate agent would absolutely know that, right? But this has nothing to do with relevance. It has everything to do with how people think about buying houses. And this is where, again, goes back to seeing and the subject matter expertise of the domain and how you bring it back into the ranking using these signals. And just to highlight why relevance is a tiny, tiny fraction of this, like of all these signals here on the page, you can see like terms, synonyms, language embeddings, and topicality usually are where relevance lies. And that's what pretty much everybody does. But now you're missing all this other information about your domain that could affect your search results. And I want to say the same applies to queries, especially now natural language queries. We're talking a lot about like, well, a query enters and you want to do a RAG and then you want to give it to an LLM. And there's a big impedance mismatch because the way information retrieval systems work, they rely on narrow queries, whereas the way LLMs work or LLM applications, the expectation they give the user is, hey, just talk to me, right? So now you have something like, for example, we're working with one company similar to Jira. They have like a productivity app, and like, well, one of the queries they want to support is what is David working on? This has nothing to do with relevance, except for the word David. But even the word David will not work because when you look at user signals in any given company, you're going to have like 100 Davids. So now you go back like, oh, I need entity understanding. Not only that, I need what does it mean to be working on something. Well, it means you have some messages in Slack and probably some Jira tickets. Well, these are the searches you need to make. So now how do you actually go from what is, natural language into something that is more specific, so you can actually, fix both for like retrieval and precision. And finally, this is the kind of the really interesting piece, which is like, how do you calibrate all this to like human feedback? Because with ranking specifically, and again, especially if there's a way of like seeing the world, and then there's actions that happen in the world, right? And those two have to be somehow in sync. And what we did with Google, and even the system we're developing now, and we're trying to like work with different companies, if you have an understanding of what is good, and then you have like thumbs up, thumbs down data, click data, you can build predictors of those things, and then you can calibrate your entire combination of things. Because you might think, let's say, for example, you're working with a company called Gamma, they make slide decks, and they think a good slide deck looks like this. And then the users come down and say like thumbs down, thumbs down, thumbs down. You look at why they're saying thumbs down. Well, they care a lot, for example, about preservation of the input, much more than they care about quality of the images. Well, okay, you thought those things were equal, but they're not equal. So when you rank or when you score your generated output, you might want to actually reduce the score on one versus the other, depending on user feedback. And this, yeah. So the approach, just to give you a sense, and then I'll talk about like what we're building and how we try to solve these problems, is really this goes back to the information theoretic side. The reason we call them signals actually comes from a lot of information retrieval people were steeped in like information theory. So like, what's the signal? And basically, the best way to think about it is like it starts at the head and then goes into torso and tail. And the more signals you get, the more you see of your domain. It's almost like a statement about compression, one way or the other. Like, how much do you see and how much are you losing, right? Because the world's very complex. You'll never see the world fully. But how many things can you see about the world? Like, can it be 60% complete, 70, 80, 90? How far can you go? Now, places like Google, especially because it serves 3 billion users, and there's like a lot of revenue. A lot of people can spend a lot of time building a lot of signals, so they would go like fully, right? Like from the head to the torso to the tail. They all improve the quality of the thing. That's what state of the art looks like. It's almost like 1% better every day, just by finding new kinds of queries you cannot solve and then solving for those queries. Now, not everybody's there, right? Because not everybody has like $200 billion business based on their search engine. But like, there is a part in the spectrum where you're much better off than where you might be right now, which is just based on relevance, which again goes back to like this one bit at the top, right? So just in terms of like the architecture itself, let's take an example, right? Like, you have a document and you care about like the relevance. You also care about whether it has great images, whether this is made for an SEO. This is something web search and like all search struggles with. There's a lot of content that is content farmed, not written by actual people who have an actual point of view, but mostly put there so that it can receive clicks. And then there's things like popularity. But you can further take it and take something like, well, what does it mean to be written for SEO? And then you can say, well, that means the paragraphs it doesn't have a good paragraph structure, and the title looks like clickbait. And now you've deconstructed what this idea is. Now you're in a place where you can collect those signals, right? So signal is actually a very concrete thing, which is like, there are a lot of documents on the web that are SEO. There's a lot of tickets in my Jira that have names that are not tied to a graph, like an entity graph. These are signals. Like, these are things you would want to see. And then what you go and try to do is reconstruct that signal, using document understanding, LLM, and document understanding, document enrichment, query enrichment. They work pretty well. There's a lot of techniques there. I'm happy to chat with all of you about those. And then you just like basically put all those things together, and then you train a combination towards a good ranking function, right? And how do you train it? Depends on what you want to do, right? So for example, at Google, it was a combination of like raters and click data. And the stuff we're building is a little bit agnostic in the sense like we can train against supervised labels, we can train against preference data, but it is really, really important to be able to train towards those combinations, because in reality, not all these things matter, and not all these things matter for all queries. So for example, if you have a credit card seeking query, like kind of like a finance thing, which is sensitive, you probably want to weigh spam much more than you want to weigh relevance. But if you just have a query that's like, looking for dishes like lasagna, then it's kind of fine. And maybe spam is not such a big deal. And here you want to focus much more on things like, do people like this dish or not? So yeah, state of the art search is basically just a process of constant iteration, again, towards ranking. What I would say is like this 3-step process. You baseline your quality, right? And baselining quality on just relevance is actually not a bad idea. So most of the time we tell people like, okay, just take your basic vector database, basic BM25. Don't spend a lot of time. And not because this will give you great search, but because you need a baseline. Because without the baseline, there's no iteration yet you can do. Now, the second thing you do is you do this loss analysis, which is identify these clusters of losses. Like what is broken? So for example, if you're doing this like, enterprise app, right? Well, what's broken is doesn't understand users. And users is a very important concept in enterprise because like, a ticket is owned by a user. It's reviewed by a user. A user has a manager who might be in the approval chain. So all these things are important to know to be able to bake in. So if you see these kinds of losses, then you say, oh, I need user signals. So now you go to quality engineering and then you say, hey guys, we need to understand users better because that's a big cluster of losses. And now you just bake it back into ranking by combining it as an extra signal, right? And that's why this tree structure matters so much because it allows you to do this iteration. Every time you see a missing thing, add a new signal. It's a very additive process. And then your ranking improves over time as you add more things to it. One parting thought, in the long run, all AI problems become search problems. And we just told you, search is just ranking. So all AI problems become also ranking problems. This is the better lesson, one of my favorite kind of documents to read. If you haven't read it, you should absolutely do it. The argument there is as compute increases, most problems become search problems. The best way to think about it, if you had infinite compute and anybody asks you a question, you could just brute force the answer. Literally, this is the whole like monkey on a keyboard theorem. Like given enough time, a monkey typing at a keyboard will write Shakespeare, right? And that's kind of true for a computer. That's what the bitter lesson says. And this is what's very interesting because now you can see all these problems in AI, right? Like inference time scaling. Really what it's doing is just generating many variants and ranking the best ones, right? You go out and search the web for 100 documents, bring them back, understand them, generate something on LLM, go back again, right? So this idea of ranking or scoring becomes a really important one. The other one is synthetic data generation. If you have pipelines that are doing fine tuning, a lot of what we do now is that go to LLM, generate 10,000 data examples. Most of them will be garbage, but 500 of them will be amazing. But then you can draw the line there. How? By scoring them, right? And taking the 500 best ones. And then reinforcement learning, and this is the part we are most excited about because scoring is really how reward models work. So basically something like GRPO will go out and map everything and then come back and say like, oh, I punish you for this or I reward you for this. Well, punishment and reward is just a scalar from 0 to 1 and that's what a scoring function gives you anyway. But it goes back to seeing like, how do you tell the reward model to punish? Like what is good, what is bad? Well, it goes back to like, what do you care about? And do you have the signals to know what's happening and whether it's good or bad? Just one last thing about us. We have like, this is a lot of the insights we developed like inside Google and like some of the systems there. And our basic hypothesis is like, can you formulate pretty much every AI and search problem as an optimization against scoring? So we build these scoring systems. We have scoring models. So think of them as foundation models that given input-output pairs or given data, it can just give you a score. Like here's an email, is it professional tone? 0.7, right? And so it turns your entire world from the qualitative or the textual or the generative into the very numerical, the very quantitative. The best way to think about that is evals. But as I said, like ranking is a much more sophisticated concept. It's really about making everything numbers. And when you make everything numbers, a lot of interesting things happen. For example, if you've used DSPy, if DSPy uses a validator, so it takes your prompt and makes a better prompt. How does it do it? It just runs a lot of variants. It's a search problem. It takes 50 variants and then scores them against your ranking function and then gives you the best variant, right? Synthetic data generation or data filtering, this is the SFT world. Again, if you have a lot of data, can you make a cross where you take the best data and only use that to train the model? That increases the quality. Reinforcement learning is the straight up analogy because reward models are ranking functions effectively. And then, in inference optimization, things like routing as well, right? So the things we developed is like this scoring system, both to generate signals and then to combine them. And then what we also developed is like, how do you integrate them? This is much more about like, well, can you use the scoring system in a DSPy? Can you use it in a GRPO algorithm? And things like that. Anyway, this is my talk. I hope this was useful. I think, let's have a chat. I'm here, I'll be out there. I think specifically if you're kind of like struggling with the kinds of things that are like, quality plateaus, I would say. Like you've tried a lot of things and things don't necessarily work and now you need to like make your AI much better or you may need to make your search much better. I think this is sort of the plateau that people hit. And from there, you have to like start doing it in a much more quantitative way, really measuring things, really optimizing against those measurements, going from prompts to things like RL. I think things like this would be really interesting to chat with you about. But I'll be outside. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.